I'm just going to sit because it's we've all been listening very hard, so I hope you don't mind me being a bit informal. Just shout out if you've got any questions. Feel free to stop me rambling on if I'm hesitating. So, my name's Rowan. I have my own artist management company called RedGreenBlueCo. I'm from Australia originally, and I've been based over the last 7 years between New York, London, and in Utrecht over here. I kind of split my time half, usually between Holland and the UK at the moment. My company has managed a whole bunch of different artists over its kind of 8-year existence. At the moment, my focus releases this year are for Bears Den and for Tiger Town. Bears Den being a British trio, which we're talking about today, and Tiger Town is a 4-piece band from Sydney, Australia. I guess the point of today's kind of quick run-through is to just talk as a bit of a case study about what's happened with Bears Den to get them to the point of selling out a iconic British music venue in London called the Roundhouse to 3,300 tickets. A bit about the band. The band are a 3-piece in London. They formed in 2012. We started working together mid-2012. And there was nothing going on. Literally just 3 guys, a couple of acoustic guitars and a banjo. And I saw them perform at a support for Ben Howard, who was a friend of theirs, and was blown away by the connectivity of the music. The audience was super engaged, and so was I, and we're like, we can probably do something with this. With the timing of us working together and their particular style of music, we were kind of on the back end of a bit of a fashion trend to do with kind of that kind of folky revival that was happening with a bunch of leading artists in the UK. And that was both a bit of a blessing, but it's also a bit of a curse in terms of trying to access media. So I guess a key part of what we're trying to talk about here today is that Bears Den really grew from the beginning without having a magic wand. There was no radio play to kick things off. There was no amazing feature article. It was literally just the band and some fans. And through a process over a couple of years, we built from tiny venues up to a great number of tickets, and that moment was a key part of how we demonstrated to the rest of the industry and to a lot of the gatekeepers that there was actually something to pay attention to here. So the idea is to kind of run you through kind of some of the key things that we did, a bit of the story, and to encourage you all to go forth and do the same and be self-determining in your own careers and what you're working with, of course. So I guess why are we talking about this? A case study of this is a bit of a case study of how I approach the management of the band's career in different cities. So the model for London that we'll talk through today is an example of the kind of process that we think through about Amsterdam or Berlin or Manchester or Edinburgh. Try and think of how we progress the relationship with our fans in those cities. So you can replicate this thinking, and not just in your home city, but beyond, and thinking about different communities. At the center of everything that we do, we always talk about the relationship between the artist, the creator, and the audience. So as I said, all of these decisions are based around that relationship and developing and growing that relationship in terms of numbers. We want more people to engage with the band. And the whole point of this is to build momentum, to build a bit of a snowball and push it up the hill to get it to a tipping point where it will roll down with its own momentum. That was kind of the objective there. So where did the journey begin? We started with our first headline show in February 2013. We started with a tiny venue in London called the Slaughtered Lamb, which is in a stinky basement in the basement of a pub. It's a 150 capacity venue, and we basically brought all of our friends and all of our distant relatives and made sure that the room was nice and full and that it was sold out in advance. That's not too hard to do. I'm sure you all know at least 150 people. Creating a sold-out event is something you can manufacture, and you probably should, because everyone loves to see a sold-out on the poster, and it's good bargaining chip to moving forward. So we started with that. It was largely kind of fabricated in terms of the audience, but there were fans there, and those fans blown away by the experience and making sure the live show was of good quality to kind of step into the next venue for us. We actually did a show 1 month later. We announced it, as soon as we'd sold out that show, we announced our next show. Hadn't even done the first show yet, but had already put the next one on sale, and it was a 350 capacity venue called the St. Stephen's Church in Shepherd's Bush. And that was the launch of our first EP. So we were also tying in focal points around each of these events, giving people a reason to go to the shows. Not just, we're playing, you should come see us, we're really good, but we're coming, this is the occasion, it's really special, you need to be a part of this. So trying to build a bit of a more emotional connection as to why people need to be a part of what you're doing. I'll step through the rest a bit quickly, a bit quicker. 2013 in November, so about 6 months later, we did the Village Underground, which is a 750 capacity venue, so almost, or essentially doubling the size of the venues. Sold that out. 2014 in May, the Brixton Electric, 1,300 tickets, sold out. 2014 in October was the launch show for the album, so we did a small underplay, sold it out in 3 days. It was 500 tickets. And that led into our album tour, which we had 2 album tours last year, one in February at the Shepherd's Bush Empire, 2,000 tickets, and of course finishing at the Roundhouse, 3,500. So, who is involved in the team, and who are the people who have helped us to kind of build that legacy of sold-out shows that have, has developed for Bears Den? At the center of that wheel is, of course, the band and myself, who determine the vision of where we want to be perceived to be playing. What's the branding connotations? How do our fans want to engage with us? Do they want seated shows? Do they want standing shows? All that kind of stuff. And what locations are most appropriate within the city? Second to that is our agent. We work with Lucy Dickens at ITB. She's a very gifted agent, knows lots of very good promoters, and has a bunch of other big, scary artists behind her that can help put pressure on things that we need to get, challenging venues, better offers from promoters, and also keeping people accountable. We use local promoters in most of the different cities in the UK. Internationally, we tend to work nationally with single promoters, but essentially working with a promoter who has expertise in that particular market, and one that actually cares about what you're doing. Doesn't matter how amazing the promoter is on paper, focus on people who understand your vision and are going to be the ones who are committed to doing a thorough job of it. So we use Communion Presents in London. We don't do any other shows with them in the UK. We use separate promoters everywhere, but they've been there since day one, so all of these shows have been done in partnership with them. Speaking more broadly, of course, our label is very involved. Communion Records and Caroline are our label partners. Claire, who's sitting over here, you should definitely talk to, the head of digital. Our label's very supportive and involved with our live career. They help mastermind and augment the marketing behind these stories, and they also help to disseminate the news. So we work very closely with our publicists in securing interviews and kind of things that help to cover not only leading into the shows, but also the after effects and to amplify and echo things. And lastly, our partners. We don't in the UK we do not use sponsors for our tours, although I do it with other artists in other markets. But that's something to think about. And also our ticketing partners, who I don't have a lot of interfacing with. It's usually through the promoter, but we use a whole range of different ticketing partners who have incredible reach in different ways, and we work with them in all different ways. We obviously work our own ticketing platform through Muziekgebouw, and Susie's here, and you should definitely chat to her about the incredible strength that you can have, and I'll talk a bit more about that later. So that's our core team around it, who've kind of come to build us to this point. I guess I want to just talk through 3 key concepts and leave you with some things to think about in applying your own strategy as you kind of step up or build your snowball and push it up the hill. The first is it's the responsibility of the artist and the manager, as well as the whole team, and not just the responsibility of the promoter, to market the shows. Everyone involved in our team is part of our marketing team. Everyone has a role to play, and when we work together and we all contribute ideas, that's how results are achieved. So for example, obviously the promoter, who is usually managing the spend in terms of hard marketing, that's a very collaborative approach. Communion and Maz and the team there, we have regular, probably weekly or every 2 weeks, we would call about the show, look through the budget, see what has been spent, what hasn't been spent, what might need to be spent, but also making sure the shows are nice and profitable. If you don't have to spend £5,000 on marketing a show, don't spend it. Try and sell them out early. Being reactive and responsive as opposed to just drilling in with the with the spend that you always have to usually spend with that kind of a venue. We also talked about publicity being the best form of free marketing and getting your message out. So thinking of content ideas, and it's a big digital conversation, and it can loop in with anything from picking support bands and featuring their music on Spotify playlists, through to ideas on content and things you want to create on the road to bring people along with the story. So think about that. Second point is go where the love is. It's all well and good to go and play an iconic city, but if you have no fans there, what are you doing? You may find that there are other places where you do have a lot of fans that you haven't bothered to visit. So ways that we find this out, through our D2C platform with Muziekgebouw, we have the data and the locations of about 30,000 fans of ours worldwide. We know exactly where they are. We can email them at any point in time, and so whenever we're playing a show, these are the people we find out. We also go to certain cities more than others. A good example is Birmingham is the second biggest city in the UK, and we've played one show there, I think, in our whole career. We have so many more fans in much smaller cities like Brighton or Bristol or Edinburgh, or even Belfast. So we prioritize going to where our fans actually are. Also look at your Spotify fan insights. Facebook, YouTube has some interesting analytics, and I think some of these range in quality, but just try and get a sense of where they are. Lastly, I would just encourage you all to kind of run your own race. There's no, I think there's no such thing as a magic wand in the music industry, or the things that the projects that we all work on deserve more time and attention than just expecting someone else to do everything for you. So put a plan in place that you can grow modestly, grow over time, and try and build your own momentum, and then you'll probably find that other people will want to get more involved. But yeah, that's kind of my 3 points. Any questions?
Very quick question. Anyone?
Good question. I think in terms of the band's overall career, I think there was a real tipping point at the Shepherd's Bush Empire for us. We got to a point where we were really wanting to connect better with the album and the media. When we put this album out in October 2014, I think we had one review in print press, a couple of spot players from a couple of DJs who are very supportive and helped us build our story, but we really needed a breakthrough. Selling out that venue and it being iconic was a huge moment for us. But I would say there's been a series of key wins along the way, and each of these sold-out shows has meant a different thing for our journey. But overall, a commercial tipping point, I think that's probably the one.
Fantastic. Rowan, thank you very much indeed. We're going to move on now.